Capital Outlay Committee of the Whole to order this December 1st, 2020. Ms. Jenkins, if you would, please call the roll.
Ms. Dominguez?
Present.
Mr. Westmoreland?
Present.
Mr. Moore?
Here.
Ms. Abrams? Mr. Toller?
Here.
Ms. Richards?
Present.
Mr. Duncan?
Present.
Ms. Simmons?
Here.
Mr. Bush?
Here.
Our first item is to consider approval of the low bid to remove and replace the Ponchatoula Junior High School's auditorium HVAC unit, repair the roof as needed, and repair interior ceilings. That low bid coming in from CDX Construction LLC in the amount of $180,000. And it is the administration's recommendation to approve that low bid. Is that correct, Mr. Schnadelbach?
That is correct, Mr.
All
Chairman.
right. What else can you tell us about this project and recommendation?
The original estimate for this work was $200,000. It has been approved by the court, and we're ready to proceed once the board finds.
Is there a motion to adopt the administration's recommendation and to approve the low bid?
I'll make a motion. I'll second.
Motion is made by Mrs. Dominguez, seconded by Mrs. Bailey Simmons. Mr. Schnadelbach, is this a vendor that we've worked with before?
No, I do not believe. Pierre's in the audience, is the architect. Mr. Cavetta's not here. He's unavailable at the time. Hopefully, Pierre will have that answer.
I'm not aware of him doing any work for a school system in particular, but we have worked with them on other projects before, and they perform well. They're out of Covington.
So they're out of Covington, and they have a good reputation as far as with your company? And then they met all of the criteria in our bid packets? All right. Any other?
Confirm their bid, they're happy with it.
Any other questions from board members? Is there any public input? All right, if there is none, we'll call the question and ask members to vote their machines.
It's crazy.
Voting is open.
Yes, with me.
Yes, Mr. Toller.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, Mr. Moore. Ms. Richards? Yes, Ms. Richards. Voting is closed. Motion passes unanimously.
All right, next item on the agenda is a recommendation from the administration to approve the low quote to purchase a baseball scoreboard for Sumner High School's baseball field from Rainey Electronics Incorporated in the amount of $5,430. Mr. Schnadelbach, what can you tell us about this item?
This is the low quote, and it is the one vendor that provided a 10-year warranty and including the advertising sign to the bid, which was desirable by the school. Our maintenance department has worked with this vendor before and will actually be installing the signs at this time. So this cost does not include installation, but it's the administration's recommendation to move forward.
Okay. I'm sure there'll be some questions from the board, but let me get a motion on the table. That motion is from Mr. Toller. Is there a second on the motion to adopt the administration's recommendation?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Richards. Any questions from the board?
Yeah, just to give you a quick little history on it. For years, the scoreboard's been out, and like you said, maintenance has actually just given up on trying to keep it going because it's so outdated. The school actually, one of the coaches got a scoreboard donated from, I believe it was from Colin, and they went and got it and hauled it to the school. And for the last 2 years, we've been looking at plans of erecting a donated scoreboard. To put up a donated scoreboard that was already outdated when Colin replaced it was going to cost more than what it cost to get a new scoreboard. Sumner Field is also used by Kentwood for the last so many years, so it's a dual-purpose field with no scoreboard. So And that's why we went ahead and, we tried to put it on the agenda for the first part of this year, and then with COVID, we kind of pushed it back to the back of the table. So that's why it's back again. We're trying to get it installed before the baseball season next spring.
Any questions? Mrs.
Yeah,
Simmons?
is this the first time we bought scoreboards? Or-
This is the first time we purchased a baseball scoreboard that I can recall.
Yeah. But we don't have anything against doing that, right?
No, we have no policy or procedure that prohibits it.
Yeah, okay, good.
Any other questions from the board? Any public input? There are none. We'll ask the members to vote your machines.
Voting is open. Yes by Ms. Richards. Voting is closed. Motion passes unanimously.
All right, final item on the agenda is to consider approval of the low quote to purchase musical instruments for Ponchatoula Junior High School from Music and Arts in the amount of $25,047, which is the administration's recommendation. Mr. Schnadelbach, you have any information about this item?
Yes, the Ponchatoula Junior High's band is a very large band, as y'all are aware. They requested a lot more instruments than are being recommended by the administration. In talking with the principal, she identified 3 tubas and 3 sousaphones as her top priority items, and that's what we're recommending today, 6 instruments at the cost of $25,000 lower price.
Jeez.
We have purchased musical instruments before for not only high schools, but also for junior high schools. The last time we made a purchase at a junior high school was for Hammond Junior High back in 2007, and we spent $20,000 at
That just seems expensive for
that. They vary.
instruments.
Over $4,000 a piece.
Wow. Is there a motion to adopt the administration's recommendation? Mrs. Dominguez
I'll make a
makes
motion.
that motion.
I'll second.
Seconded by Mrs. Bailey Simmons. Any questions from the board?
I do have a question, though.
Ms. Bailey?
So, at one time, way back when, I know this came up years ago, and we didn't buy instruments for schools, but now,
We have at times denied instruments, but over the last probably 5 years, we have made purchases for the high schools. The only other time we made a purchase that I can recall for the junior high was back in '07 at Greenville Park. You know, we made purchases at at Hammond High School, we spent almost $60,000 back in '14. Amite High School, we spent $10,000 back in 2011. Lorenzo High School, we made 2 purchases, one in '09 for $32,000 and one in '07 for $24,000. And then Amite High, again, back in '08, we spent $20,000.
thank you.
I'd just like to say, the band actually came and entertained us a couple of times. They are enormous. They're almost bigger than some of our they are bigger than some of our high school bands, and they are feeding into Ponchatoula High School. But these are those giant things that parents truly can't hardly afford to buy to put their children in the bands. So I think it's very beneficial for us to do this for our music departments, and then, like I said, it does feed into Ponchatoula High School, so. Oh, the other thing I wanted to mention was actually the PTO at the high school has committed to giving so much money a year to purchase at least 3 or 4 instruments for the next several years. So it was kind of going to be like a matching thing. If they do this, they put their money towards the program, would we be willing to help them? That's kind of how it got started. So thank you to the PTO and the parents who are willing to, take their funds that they raise at the Strawberry Festival or whatever other fundraisers they do to provide musical instruments at the high school or the junior high for us so that we can match some of their efforts. Appreciate them.
I want to say something. It's okay. I've heard them numerous times. They are large and they're outstanding. They're really strong sometimes in some of our high school bands, and they have an amazing leader there. So I'm very impressed with what they have.
Mr. Schnadelbach, certainly I don't have any opposition to this, but it occurs to me that, because you mentioned the big purchase of the Greenville Park musical instruments, and I don't think that Greenville Park currently has a very active band program. When something like that happens, does central office go in and maybe collect or inventory the instruments at each of these campuses and make them available to other programs throughout the parish?
Well, I know they're inventory. I don't know if they're available. Normally, the junior high programs are tied into the high school, and then the high school band instructor communicates and shares instruments. I'd have to check with Hammond High to see if their band instructor has taken those instruments from the Greenville Park, if they're not being used at Greenville Park.
Like, I know we do something like that with desks, for example, where we have a central warehouse and
Correct.
we'll shuffle desks around rather than buying new desks. But, I mean, with these instruments being this expensive, and then hearing, like, you know, what Ms. Dominguez was describing, where the PTO was having to raise money for various instruments, I'd hate for them to do that if there's other instruments that we already own not being used at some other campus.
I'll have to look into that for you. Just don't get back with you.
Any other questions from the board?
Yes,
Mr. Bush.
thank you. What was the total amount that they wanted before?
About a little over $40,000.
And what account is this money coming out of?
This matter won't be approved tonight. The board approves the phase 1 projects. There will be no restricted money, so this would come from a parish-wide pay-as-you-go.
Thank you.
And to answer your first question on the total amount, I have it here. Total request was $30,706. It included three French double horns that we didn't recommend, a vibraphone, and a marimba. Did I say that right? Marimba.
Say it real fast, it doesn't matter.
Well, you know,
To me, they look like xylophones.
I'm going to encourage 4 other board members to help me with this. We have a restricted fund that can only be spent at Ponchatoula, Champ Cooper's not included, for these type of programs, that we won't have to fight money for. This was pre-DSEG money. It's 3 million dollars. And I think we would be irresponsible if we let all of that restricted money go or approve it for phase 1. I'm not saying we shouldn't spend it on Ponchatoula, that's different, but we'll never have this monies ever again in Ponchatoula District to spend for this type of stuff. We'll always have to go to the general fund. And I don't think we'll ever come back again and buy band uniforms or band instruments or stuff, because I don't think we'll get enough board members to approve it. So when we discuss phase 1 funding, I'm asking that we figure out a way to save some of that restricted money in Ponchatoula schools that we can use for these type of projects for those students, so we won't have to come and take money from the general fund. If that makes sense to anyone.
Mr. Schneiderbach, as I understand it, the recommendation is that this is coming out of parish-wide capital outlay funds. Yeah, so we're not using the Ponchatoula restricted funds for this purchase?
Correct.
Okay.
But you said if we use it all for phase 1, obviously it's gone. And these projects here that could be easily funded for our schools, that monies will be gone. And I'm not saying it's not going to be gone for Ponchatoula, because it will be, but it will be in buildings. I think it's a lot easier to get 5 school board members to vote for building a building on a campus versus some of these extracurricular clubs that need our help. And we've got that restricted money that's been there for 6 or 7 years that only can be spent for these little projects that we seem like we always forget, band or drama or arts. And we at Ponchatoula still have our restricted fund. If we spend it on buildings, which it's gone. So I'm just talking out loud and trying to drum up some interest in keeping some of our restricted fund in that account so we can spend it on these kind of projects.
Okay. Any other questions, Ms. Dominguez?
So But you just kind of go back, they only wanted $30,000 and we're doing 25. Is there a reason why we're not purchasing those other instruments? I
The
mean,
recommendation is based on the fact that the last time we funded musical instruments at the junior high was $20,000. So.
just trying to keep it about the
And
same.
to make clear to the administration that the other items will be considered at a future.
Okay, well, that's what I wanted to know. So I do know that the PTO were purchasing other instruments, not what they actually requested us to purchase. So the list that we had, they're going to either not have those, or they're going to figure out where they can get them. I don't know
Right,
where
but
they-
the items that we're recommending were the top priority.
Top priority by the principal and the band
recommended by
director.
the School-based administration,
But in the future, we may can buy some more.
correct.
Okay, I'm just was curious why you left that little, I mean, not that every dollar doesn't count, but I mean, $5,000, you know, more to get what they needed. I was just wondering why you chose not to add that as well.
I will say I'm open to revisiting the purchase of those other instruments, but I'd really like to know what instruments we as a system already own before we do any additional musical instrument purchases.
And I don't have 3 quotes on the other instruments, and
Yeah.
I only have 1 quote, so I wouldn't want to make a recommendation
Yeah.
on the other instruments at this time.
Any other questions from the board? Any public input? All right, if there are- No? If there are none, I'll ask the members to vote your machines.
Voting is open. Voting is closed. Motion passes unanimously.
All right, there being no other business to come before this committee, the meeting is adjourned.